All right, well, let's get going. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for our conversation about 8,000 days in retirement. Um, I accidentally said it 800 when I was reviewing the meeting, but it's 8,000. That's more fun. Um, my name is Dan Lash. I'm one of the partners here at VLP Financial Advisors. For some of you who don't know VLP, or many of you, I'm sure, are working with VLP. Um, we're a 30-year-old financial planning firm. Um, we have approximately 9 advisors today and 20 employees with collectively across all our advisors over 100 years of experience now. We're really happy to have you join us today. And most of our time and energy is spent helping clients prepare for their financial future and coming up with ways in which they can be successful. So today's conversation will be around what are some of the different changes that occur throughout the retirement process. So our speaker today is Ryan Sullivan. Ryan is a managing director of Applied Insights for Hartford Funds. He travels extensively, leading communication workshops around the country and speaking on a variety of financial topics. Those topics focusing on retirement, mainly the focus, is retirement research from MIT Age Lab. And he'll be talking about that a bit more during our discussion today. Ryan's been an invited speaker nationwide, providing insights to audience in 46 states. So we got to get him into a couple more states, it sounds like, and Puerto Rico. He's a passionate helping to improve communications between financial professionals and their clients. Ryan originally joined Hartford's in 1996, holding various roles of increasing responsibility. He left the company in 2012 as a vice president of advanced markets. Prior to rejoining Hartford, he founded a business to coach professionals on public speaking and improvisational mindset, working with attorneys, accountants, engineers, financial professionals, physicians, and other professionals. He's also been named vice president and head of investor education for InvestNet Money Guide, which is the financial planning software that we use. In addition to his role at Hartford Funds, Ryan volunteers his time and communication expertise to help others. Since 2012, he's led communication workshops at UNC Charlotte's Center for Leadership and Community Engagement. He's also a certified facilitator for Time Slips, a program through which he leads interactive storytelling sessions for people living with Alzheimer's and dementia. In addition, he leads a communication workshop through Charlotte Family Housing to help empower working families experiencing homelessness to achieve self-sufficiency. Ryan's a registered representative at Hartford's. He holds a Series 7 and 63 license. He also has he is also a certified financial planner, a chartered life underwriter, a chartered financial consultant, chartered retirement planning counselor, chartered mutual fund counselor, and he's also a fellow of Lomas Life Management Institute. He's originally from Hartford, Connecticut. Ryan attended Bucknell, where he earned his bachelor's in business administration, and he currently lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, with his wife, Katie. So without further ado, Ryan, take it away. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, Dan, so much for the kind introduction. Folks, I promise I'm not as boring as I sound. I hope, but truly appreciate it. So thanks to the folks at VLP for having us. Always enjoy working with them. And a sincere thanks for all of you to taking the time to be with us today to learn more about this idea of 8,000 days. Another way to think about planning for later life. So Dan mentioned this MIT Age Lab. I'll describe a bit more about who they are, why we think it'll be relevant for you all as you're thinking about not only your own experience planning for later life, but that of the people that you care about, friends, family members. And so first, to share just a bit about who this Age Lab is. So certainly you've heard of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, based up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A lot of folks don't realize that some of the things we all take for granted, email, GPS, the World Wide Web, had their origins at MIT. but this age lab is based in their School of Engineering. It is a multidisciplinary program, simply meaning that depending on the research they're doing, they can tap into their staff, which includes gerontologists, psychologists, sociologists, engineers. They also work with the schools of architecture and planning, the MIT Sloan School of Business, and on occasion, they even partner with Harvard Medical School. And their focus is on the intersection of technology, demographics, and the lifestyle choices we'll all make as we age. Couple examples. The car there, one of many autonomous vehicles they're testing around the world. In the Age Lab itself, they have a multi-million-dollar driving simulator called Miss Daisy. They do have a sense of humor, so car companies around the world, including BMW, will send new technology to the Age Lab to get feedback how to refine that, to keep all of us on the road longer safely. But to me, more interesting, the outfits worn by the MIT students seen leaning on the car. Many things at MIT have an acronym. That outfit they're wearing is called Agnes, the Age Gain Now Empathy System. Any one of us could put that on and with some calibration, better understand what it's like to be 70, 80, 90, even 100 years old. As you can see, there are goggles to simulate macular degeneration, a helmet with tethers to limit our ability to stand fully upright, a challenge we all may face as we age. There's a neck restraint to limit lateral movement, hand restraints to simulate arthritis or neuropathy, nerve damage associated with diabetes. There are weight belts and tethers to limit how much and how quickly you move. Now, when we do live events in person, typically at this point, folks ask two questions. Ryan, great, a suit that makes you feel older. Have they made the suit that makes you feel younger? Not yet. We'll let Dan and the team know. The other question we get is why? Why would you create essentially a torture device? Again, the E in Agnes stands for empathy. So if you think about the young, bright people at MIT, if as they're designing new products and services, they do that without an understanding of the challenges we all may face as we age, they won't do that very well. So Hartford Funds happened to be a founding sponsor of the Age Lab back in 1999. Another sponsor, CVS Pharmacy. So picture top executives from CVS wearing that Agnes suit, trying to shop in the typical CVS store, realizing it wasn't well laid out for an older consumer, so they started making changes to their stores worldwide. But with that, we'll dive just a little deeper, share a quote here from Dr. Joe Coughlin, the founder and director of the MIT Age Lab, seen here wearing his trademark bow tie. And here he talks about what they call a longevity paradox. Very simply, now that humans have achieved what we've attempted to live longer, often we're not sure what to do with that additional time. So you think about all the advances in car safety, food safety, healthcare, medication, sanitation, all things allowing us to live longer. But again, per the Age Lab, folks often aren't sure what to do with that time. They liken it, if you folks have ever seen a dog chase a moving car, the dog hasn't really thought about what it will do if it'll catch the car, right? So that brings us to our topic. How can we better plan for later life? Well, by understanding the concept of 8,000 days, we'll talk a little bit about the 4 phases of retirement and some things that you folks can do in working with Dan and the folks at VLP to better plan for your 8,000 days and some things to encourage of the folks that you care about. So 8,000 days, if you're good with math, you might have already figured out that's just under 22 years. Well, per the MIT Age Lab, that our lives can be broken into 4 roughly 8,000 day periods. So from when we're born to when we finish, if it's vocational school, college, a first stint in the military, roughly 8,000 days. From that point to our first midlife crisis, good news from the Age Lab, we're living long enough, we might have more than one midlife crisis. Who's excited? Probably the car companies, right? They're excited about that. From that point to when most folks will stop working at least full time, roughly 8,000 days. And from there, we'll put it gently to when our birth certificates expire, if that's gentle enough, roughly 8,000 days. What they found from interviews at the Age Lab, people in those first few phases have a decent sense of what they're supposed to be doing. There's kind of a script, right, about how we're supposed to go to school when we're younger and learn, and all the folks who help us along the way. A parent, a teacher, a mentor, a coach, a boss. So all the things that go on, well, many folks finding in that final phase, they don't have as much guidance. Certainly an opportunity for people interacting with Dan and the team, but the reality, that final phase, to be clear, 8,000 days in retirement, just an average. What we don't want is people calling up the office on day 7,999 of their retirement saying, send me a check for whatever's left. I want to go out with a party. The reality that we might wind up being the next Maria Morera, currently the oldest person documented living on our planet. She's getting closer, by the way, born in the US, now living in Spain, catching up on the oldest person documented in modern times, Jean Calment, who lived to age 122. Some of her secrets to success: she rode her bicycle until age 100, and she ate up to 2 pounds of chocolate per week. Maybe it is good for you. Now, folks, this is scandalous, but just breaking in the news, there's reports of someone who may have or is living right now at age 124 in Peru. They're trying to verify the documentation. As you'd guess, back in the day, not as much formal documentation of birth, you name it, but that would be a big deal to have someone currently living at age 124. But the reason we mentioned the following name, Catherine Switzer, that if you recognize the name, not too long ago, she celebrated the 50th anniversary of her being the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. Certainly a great accomplishment, but if we can agree, running a marathon in your 70s these days doesn't necessarily get you a write-up in the newspaper. The reason we include it, if you feel younger than your age. I hear this a lot as I travel the country. Per the Age Lab, there's a lot of science behind that. We're in better mental and physical condition than people of the same age in prior generations. The question is, what will we do with that? Will we be the next Julia Hurricane Hawkins, setting speed records and things like the 100-meter dash at age 107? Why she started running competitively at age 100, she said, there's not much competition. Now, to be clear, these folks are outliers. Instead of 8,000 days of retirement, Jean Calment had over 18,000 days of retirement. But the reality, per the Age Lab, that all of us may live longer than we expected. For a couple age 65, the probability that at least one of them gets to age 92 is currently a 50-50 chance. That's going up. And for people with higher levels of education and income, that life expectancy is even longer. But longer life is just one of the things changing about the old retirement. You think about the advent of Social Security, 1935. At that point, men, the primary breadwinner, typically. And good news from the government, you'll get a pension starting at age 65 in the form of Social Security. Any guesses what life expectancy was at that point? In your head, you might be thinking 62. And that's exactly right. In the US, roughly age 62, so a good deal, but for the government. We know that's changed. Other things that have changed, people having fewer children, relative to prior generations, too fewer relative to earlier generations, and those kids being more geographically dispersed. Myself, my brothers, the closest of us live about 3 hours away from my father. Now, he moved away from us. I don't know what that means, but we're not dropping in on dad, and he's okay with that. Other things that have changed, how technology allows us to manage and monitor our own health and to caregive for others. We'll talk more about that. Another big change, the role of women in the workforce. So Dr. Joe Coughlin, again, the founder of the Age Lab, wrote a great book called The Longevity Economy. The Longevity Economy. In it, there's a chapter called The Future is Female. Why? Well, according to the research that in the US, there are now more women earning associate, bachelor's, and master's degrees than men, more women in law school and med school than men, and more women becoming the primary breadwinner. As it is at my house, very proud of my wife who put herself through med school to become an infectious disease doctor. It's been an interesting few years. Now, hopefully you find this interesting, but per the Age Lab, this might be a lot for all of us to take in. And so why they've taken the step of naming what we'd previously call retirement, breaking that into 4 smaller phases. And the thinking, if you folks would agree, that if we can't picture something, we can't plan for it. If we can't picture it, we can't plan for it. And so we'll walk through each of these phases. I'll point out some of the opportunities and concerns that folks typically have. Again, if not only for yourself, think about for the people you care about, where they might be, what their concerns and opportunities might be. But to be clear, if there's an average of 8,000 days in retirement, it's not to say we'll spend an equal amount of time in each of these phases. We might spend the majority of the time in one phase and then move through the others quickly, especially if we or someone we care about have a health incident. But that first phase, exactly what you'd think, that honeymoon phase, this, when folks ease out of the workforce, for all the excitement that they may have, often there's a lot of trepidation, a lot of ambiguity. Folks trying to figure out, am I supposed to keep working a bit? I saw a cartoon, didn't know if I was supposed to laugh. Imagine 2 people talking. One says to the other, "So, have you decided where you're going to work when you retire?" And many folks choosing to do that. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But then also, how do we tap into our assets? Great if you're working with VLP. For folks who aren't, I run into people who aren't working with an advisor or team who say things like they think their money will last if they take 10% per year for the rest of their lives. That's improbable. On the other side, I run into folks who they've done a great job of saving and investing for retirement. They just can't relax and enjoy it. They're always so afraid of running out of money. There's actually a term we use for that, poor mental wealth. Poor mental wealth. Having a plan can help us feel more comfortable to give to causes we believe in, spend some of that with and for our families. But the last bullet here, that couples often at this point spending more time together than perhaps they have in decades, sometimes finding they don't have as much in common. So part of the reason that some folks choose to go back to work or keep working at least part-time, the nice thing is technology is making that easier to do. There are many professions where we can do part of that virtually. I would love to be with all of you in person, but great that I can be speaking with you from Charlotte. And for many people, as they're getting older, finding that learning to do remote work well is a good alternative. That for younger people, sometimes they want the FaceTime with a boss. They want to be mentored. They want visibility. Sometimes people want a bit more flexibility in later life. So the research showing here that for older workers saying, I might be okay with some more virtual work. And when you think about why to keep working, a group called EBRI, the Employee Benefit Research Institute, asks people who work past traditional retirement age. As you can see here, the majority just say, I like what I do. I want to stay active and engaged. On a related note, it's shown that now if we work, volunteer in later life, it lessens our risk of dementia, depression, isolation, all benefits. But as you look through that list, you can zoom in a bit. At the top of your screen, you should have a button for view options, but you'll see that only about 40% of people said that they were working to help make ends meet. Even with that, some folks saying, oh, I didn't mean my ends, that some of you might be in the situation, what we call the sandwich generation, where you're helping your adult kids at the same time you're helping your parents as they age. As you can see, for many people, providing more help for those adult children. And per the Age Lab, we're living long enough. Instead of the sandwich generation, we might be in the club sandwich generation, where we're helping not only our kids, but our grandkids, maybe our great-grandkids. So if knowing where our money is going to when we're planning for retirement, any money we give to the kids, obviously not going towards our retirement, we also need to be realistic about where our retirement income will come from and encourage that of younger generations. So here, again, EBRI, a study where they ask people who are currently working, where will your income come from? And folks say, well, at least in part, from a defined benefit pension plan. 60% say that, and yet only 40% of folks have a defined benefit pension plan, and those numbers are going down. So being realistic about how to help younger generations, if it is that they won't have a pension, Social Security won't play as big a part, some folks deciding they want to help their kids a bit more financially, legacy, estate planning, all things to talk to Dan and team about. But fun fact about me, I love retirement-oriented t-shirts. Imagine the one that says, hello pension, goodbye tension. Well, the reality, there still can be some tension as we get to what they call the big decision phase. Questions like, should we move somewhere warmer, closer to family, upsize, downsize? Dr. Joe, the founder of the Age Lab, sums this up. If you folks have ever heard a song from the band The Clash, should I stay or should I go? Not a surprise. When people are asked where they want to age, most people say they want to age at home, in their own home. The nice thing is technology can help with that. Folks, now available in Europe, soon in the US, the ability to get a personal airbag. It kind of looks like a fanny pack. If, as you're walking, you start to fall, the airbag deploys, absorbs up to 90% of the impact of that fall. Now, we had one gentleman at a live event say he could have used that in college, another story entirely, but the reality that technology can help us age in place more safely. But you might be surprised, according to Age Lab research, that going forward, we'll move more over age 50 than we will have under age 50. And that's very different than prior generations. You see some of the options listed here. The one I'll point your attention to, a continuing care retirement community. I'm sure there's some in your area. As I travel the country, there's many around, but often somewhat upscale, independent living, assisted living, perhaps a memory care center for folks living with Alzheimer's or dementia, but especially that independent living, kind of a party atmosphere. Great way to maintain social connections. We'll talk more about that. But the big deal per the Age Lab, we need to make decisions about where we may want to wind up sooner than we think. The reality, if we wait until a loved one's had a fall, we have health issues, that our options might be limited. And CCRCs, those continuing care retirement communities, often you have to make a big financial commitment up front and what might be a multi-year waiting period. So why the Age Lab says we need to consider 3 questions earlier in life and encourage people we care about to do the same. Folks, with that, I'm about to share with you 3 questions per the MIT Age Lab that will predict our future quality of life. If you want to scooch up towards the edge of your seat. So these 3 questions are intentionally a bit odd. The researchers call them iceberg questions. Like icebergs in the ocean, you see a little bit above the water, there's a lot more below the surface. That first question, who will change my light bulbs, really gets to how will I safely age in the place of my choosing? And we talked a bit about that. The next one, how will I get an ice cream cone? Really getting to how will we maintain access to the little things we enjoy? This gets to things like transportation, which you might be surprised to find for the average couple, it's the number 2 out-of-pocket unreimbursed expense. Housing's number 1. Transportation often ekes out healthcare, in part because if we're buying or renting, leasing a car, and you add on maintenance, gasoline, insurance, altogether, it can be the number 2 expense, one we should be more aware of. But last, most important question, who will I have lunch with? Per the Age Lab, essential that we maintain our social network, especially as we get to what's called the navigating longevity phase. The reality that at some point in later life, our health will take up more of our time, energy, focus, and money. So imagine this, the Age Lab asked people of different ages to list their top 3 concerns about getting older. I'll let you ponder what yours would be and then show you the results. As you can see from ages, there's a key underneath that shows you what each of those emblems represent. You can enlarge that, the view options at the top of your screen. But you see there where for many folks between 25 and 64, their finances are their top concern, later in life, their health, but the reality that those things are intertwined. Maybe you've heard the new saying, that which does not kill you now makes you take expensive prescriptions. Not really meant to be a joke. The reality that things that would have been fatal in the past often now will need a pharmaceutical drug, a device, something that may not be fully covered by insurance, and we may need that for the rest of our lives. Now, it would be nice if you'd agree if we could only focus on 3 things at a time, but per the Age Lab, these things add up as we get older, especially if we're caregiving for someone else. If you've caregived or been a caregiver for a loved one, might start with the social visit, a quick check-in call, but then maybe you're taking them to appointments, helping them with their medications. In later life, maybe helping to feed them or bathe them. So when you look at all the things that go into being a caregiver, the nice thing is technology can help a bit. So you've all seen the Roomba, automated vacuum cleaner designed by MIT grads. There are now separate robots you can get that mop the floor. A different one washes the windows, yet another weeds the garden, and there's one that mows the lawn. Of course, there's additional expense, but for people who want to keep things straightened up, live in a bit more remote area, all things to consider. But per the Age Lab, and we'll get serious for a moment, that if someone's providing that caregiving, most often it's the oldest adult daughter for mom or dad, not the way it needs to be, but most often how it plays out. And that comes at a cost. For that oldest adult daughter or whomever's providing the care, we saw it during COVID. Women later in life leaving the workforce to care for a loved one. Those later years of our work, usually when we're making more, paying into Social Security, into retirement plans, and per AARP, the cost of that unpaid care that we're providing, especially older women, over $450 billion per year. So that role of caregiver, we all might be in that at some point, at least for a while. And per the Age Lab, we may wind up in what they call the solo journey phase, where due to the fact that we're the loss of a loved one, divorce, or more people choosing not to get married. So for all those reasons, we may be living on our own in later life. Women more likely to do that, in part just because of their longer life expectancy. But the two statistics at the bottom, the fact that the average age of widowhood in the US, only 59 years old. A lot of folks surprised by that. People think, oh, I have more time to do that planning. Encouragement, if you haven't done that, to talk to Dan and team about how to start that process. And then the bottom right, the fact that the divorce rate for people over age 50 has doubled, for folks over age 65 has tripled. So for all those reasons, we might wind up back in that solo journey phase. Per the Age Lab, we might go back to then saying, hey, should I work a bit more? Volunteer, move closer to family or friends. The key, it's called the solo journey, but I know for Dan and team helping people in later life work through those challenges, and per the Age Lab, if we have maintained our social network, here research showing that in us being around others in later life, it literally keeps us younger. We wind up with the motor skills of someone 5 years younger by having more in-person interactions. So finding ways to get out and about, be around other people, especially younger people, great way to maintain our faculties, mental and otherwise. But folks, we shared a few serious things. I want to share a few upbeat things about what we have to look forward to. So this, a chart that shows, on average, the ages at which we peak at everything. So you can look through again, you can click that view options button to enlarge the chart. But if you have trouble, as I do, with names and faces, to find that we peak at that at ages 22 and 32 respectively. Running a marathon, age 28, which makes Harriet Thompson, who ran them till age 92 in Charlotte, where I live, even more impressive. Our life satisfaction peaks at 2 points, age 23, again, age 69. For many people, they're in that honeymoon phase. But to look at the last two, happiness with our bodies, you might be surprised, on average peaks at age 74. That per the Age Lab, we're just more comfortable with the cards we've been dealt. I saw a t-shirt, it said young at heart, the rest is a bit older. Keeping a sense of humor helps. But the last one, the fact that our psychological well-being peaks at age 82. At that point, typically we're more often to sort out what's important, what isn't. Per research from Stanford, if we're more at least somewhat comfortable with current technology, obviously you folks are, you're here on a Zoom meeting, that helps with that feeling of psychological well-being even more. But the question is, what do you do with this? So yes, it's important to go through the process of figuring out the quantitative aspects of later life, what your income sources are, what your needs are, making sure those match up. Dan and team have great tools and can help you through that. But they believe, as we do, you also need to focus on the qualitative aspects of later life, that it can't be that we just focus that we have enough to live on. We need to make sure we have enough to live for. As I contemplate whether I might sneeze, pardon me. So how do we find that sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging that makes later life worth living? We've talked about Age Lab research from Harvard research, multi-decade study showing that the #1 predictor of a longer, better retirement, finances, is helpful. So is health. The #1 predictor, the strength of our social connections with friends, with family, with your advisory team. Those are things that, for all the talk about AI and robo investing, that those things just can't be done. That there's nothing like interacting, sharing our experiences, our hopes, dreams, fears about later life, and having someone help us through that. So why, per Dr. Joe, as I wind my portion down with this quote, where he talks about if we better understand those 4 phases of retirement, We understand it. We share it with people we care about. There are two benefits. As you can see here, it reduces the stress of uncertainty, number one, and boosts prolonged independence. I think for most people, that's a winning combination, something that we all aspire to. And so the next steps, if you're interested, Dan and team can share. There's some related workbooks, research papers that go into a bit more information. The fact you can take a little time, give some thought to what you're looking forward to in those phases, what your concerns are, and then Dan and team can explain how that matches up with your financial plan. But let me pause there, see, Dan, what you'd add, or if we want to see if folks have any questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Happy to read those. I guess, Ryan, I guess I'll start it off with a question. What are some of the other concerns that you're seeing around, planning for retirement, or what are some of the research show that you're seeing planning around retirement? I know you mentioned money, that's obvious, cognitive issues, things like that. Are there other things that have come up in presentations that you think would be helpful for everybody here to know and hear?
You bet. Yeah, so not a surprise to you all that many of these things are interrelated. So we share a lot of research from a book by a gentleman named Dr. Mark Milstein, his book called The Age-Proof Brain, that for all of us, this focus about our finances, it's important, but our ability to keep our cognitive functions into later life, essential to make sure we're able to enjoy with people we care about all of our efforts. And so, related note that simple things we can do relative to what we eat doesn't have to be perfect, but eating a little healthier goes a long way. Exercise, walking just 30 minutes a day, doesn't have to be consecutive. 10 minutes in the morning with Fido, get out at lunch for a few again at night. That 30 minutes can help reduce the risk of dementia by up to 60%. And then taking care of things like our vision, our hearing. I'll pick on us guys, more likely that we don't get help with hearing issues. But if we have unaddressed hearing issues, we're at more risk of a fall, of dementia, of losing our cognitive functions. So for us to make sure that we're not just looking at the wealth aspect, that health aspect, simple things that we can do to make sure that we're able to enjoy all the things that we've put time and effort into. So to me, a lot of research about that, but very simple things we can do that can make a big difference.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you very much. So far, not any additional chats in there. Is there research around, does the planning for or preparing for retirement in the very number of years, does it seem to reduce stress or reduce concerns that people have, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I'm going to retire," and without planning it, kind of tooting our own horn from a planning perspective? But I'm just curious around that.
No, and you're exactly right that, in the past, and it still happens today, that folks treat planning for retirement like planning for a wedding day. They put all their focus into the event itself, not for what's going to happen afterwards. If all we do is focus on having a beautiful wedding, but we haven't talked about how to discuss finances with our significant other, all the other important things we should talk about, probably not going to be a long-lasting marriage. Same for retirement. Instead of just planning for the big going away party, maybe that one treat, the one trip we'll get for our family, thinking about how we want to spend our time. For all our conversation about 8,000 days today, it's not expected you're going to know what you're going to do on day 5,341. But the more you have a general sense of how you want to be spending your time and with whom and for what purpose, those are the things that tie in with the finances and make for a more meaningful retirement.
Great. Yeah, that's very helpful. I hope everybody, there's nothing else no questions specifically in the chat. I hope everyone found this helpful. We find that, you know, talking about our experiences that we see with other clients who have been retired, with our clients who are in retirement or, you know, 50 plus years old, really starting to think about it, very helpful. I think that's one of the things outside of just the planning that we do, but the experiences that we have with hundreds of retirees, um, and passing along, you know, some of our observations that we see around that, that can be helpful in that planning process. So if you have any questions as it relates to, you know, planning and things to consider, please reach out to anyone here at VLP or the advisor you're working with, and we'll be happy to talk to you, just more about some of the things that Ryan spoke about, not necessarily just the dollars and cents. There's other things that need to be taken into consideration. So, Ryan, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for spending it with us and giving all your knowledge and background. And thank you everybody for
My
attending.
pleasure.
Yeah. Enjoy Charlotte, and everybody have a happy spring and enjoy this warmer weather we seem to be getting here most recently. So thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Take care.